Anyway, we're real honored to have Ed Cox to speak to us. I think most of you in the audience know Ed's background. I am not going to read this. I promise you I'm not going to read Ed's resume. Sounds like Doug Aguilera's resume. Consulted to 3 presidents, worldwide traveler, great family man, great attorney, and I really appreciate that you would come here today and address our group. Ed has really shown sensitivity towards the plight of small business. We've done a lot of talking about, what's the entrepreneur to do and all the rules, the regulatory environment. How do small businesses raise money? How do we help small business enhance their overall business plans and thus create jobs? So with that, I would love to introduce Ed Cox, Chairman of the New York Republican State Committee. Ed, my pleasure.
Jim, thank you very much. I understand that you're a very popular chairman. You're elected for your 3rd term, despite the term limit rules. So that's pretty good. Everyone having a good morning of speed dating? Yeah. I took a look at some of the companies, and it's really very exciting. From Chinese micro credit companies to prison systems, to, of course, clean tech companies, which are very popular these days, or maybe they're on the decline. And there is also a virtual augmented reality company. How about that for a good description of investment bankers and what they do? Anyway, look, welcome to New York. This is the financial capital of the world, and of course of the United States. The question that I want to pose today is, will New York remain the financial capital of the world, as we have been since the start of the last century? And in asking this question, I want to ask a broader question. Will America remain the preeminent economy in the world? Or are we following the European path of stagnant growth, high unemployment, budgetary constraints, and inward-looking politics, all of which inhibit our ability to project both hard and soft power around the world? Hard power of the type that defeated fascism in World War II, and a combination of hard and soft power which defeated communism without a shot, and which keeps the world at peace and spreads the American gospel of free markets and democracy. One reason among many that I'm honored to address your association's conference today is that you in your daily work hold the answers to my questions, because you are a positive force for accomplishing the needed result, which is the revitalization of America's economy. You play a key role in capital formation for the American economy. Raising capital for emerging growth companies, and emerging growth companies are the key to America's innovation and job creation. You are the key advisors to the small businesses, which create most of America's new jobs. And you're the key advisors to the pockets of capital, which finance these small businesses. And never has your job been more difficult, or more interesting, or more important than it is today. Big businesses today have easy access to capital at historically great terms. I'm a director of a New York Stock Exchange company. It's amazing what you can get issuing bonds today. The Fed's easy money policies and the extraordinary Operation Twist have been a capital bonanza for the businesses that can access major banks and the bond markets. I understand that even no-covenant borrowings are coming back in vogue, and equity markets have definitely made a comeback. But the financial institutions, which have traditionally capitalized small businesses, are being crushed by legislation and rules inspired by the financial collapses of the last decade, and retail investors, burned by the Great Recession, are still cautious about investing in emerging growth companies. All this makes your capital formation work more difficult, but also more interesting. Because American innovation is still at work in the financial sector, creating new sources of financing for deserving small businesses. For example, the rise of private equity funds and other unregulated entities which don't take deposits and which make loans to such companies. sometimes at high rates, but they're still the needed capital for those small, innovative, emerging companies. And your work is more important than ever because your role in working with these new sources of capital and in implementing the new Federal Jobs Act, JOBS standing for Jumpstart Our Business Startups Act. Now, some young staff member in Congress is very creative in doing that. And you name a piece of legislation, a Jobs Act, guess what? You get bipartisan support for it. And I'm proud to say that the act was initiated in 2011 by members of the new Republican majority in the House of Representatives, which was elected in 2010. And although this is an area of finance law which I've had the pleasure of working for 40 years, and some of my colleagues from my firm are here today, this is not a CLE seminar. So I will resist the temptation to lecture on the details of the Jobs Act. Suffice it to say that the Jobs Act is the most important relaxation of government restrictions on the ability of small growth companies to access capital since the SEC's adoption of Reg D. The fact that the SEC, however, is moving very slowly to enact final implementing regulations is evidence of their discomfort with this relaxation over and above Reg D's historically effective change in the SEC's private placement rules. And you and your lawyers will be responsible for the implementation of this jobs legislation. Done right, it will be a huge boon to your clients. And as retail investors are energized by the increasingly hot equity markets, it will help to revitalize America's small businesses. But if the banking precedents set by you for implementing the Jobs Act are set by irresponsible actors, the Jobs Act will go the way of the well-meaning and theoretically sound deregulation of our capital market institutions, which started in the 1980s. And we all know how irresponsible major players abuse their newfound financial freedoms, destroyed some great Wall Street institutions, and threw the world into the Great Recession. But looking at the bigger political economic picture, the Jobs Act is but a small bipartisan exception to the current regulatory trend on the national level. I only have to say the words Obamacare, Dodd-Frank, Boeing, South Carolina, and the NLRB, or Solyndra, and you all know what I'm talking about. Obamacare is already making it difficult for small businesses to hire employees. I know some of the companies in the room here had to make radical adjustments for Obamacare. Dodd-Frank has put such a burden on banks that they are not lending to small businesses. Small banks especially spend energy and resources trying to adhere to the confusing regulations, many of which are not yet written, or contemplating mergers in order to create or become part of a banking entity big enough to deal with the burdens and complexities of Dodd-Frank. The net result of all this was summed up recently by a National Association of Independent Business survey of the members of that association, which stated, small firms were shrinking again in May, with the biggest problem being the uncertainty created by Washington on issues such as the cost of labor, taxes, deficits, spending, and new regulations, which spooks entrepreneurs and discourages new hiring. But thanks to our federal system, on the state level, the picture is more varied. As a result of the Democrats' mismanagement of their complete control of Washington, thanks to the results of the 2008 election, that mismanagement being exemplified by Obamacare, the Republican Party had a historic year in 2010. Republicans gained 63 seats in the U.S. House of Representatives to recapture the majority of that House. It was the largest seat change since 1948 and the largest for any midterm election since 1938. Republicans also gained 6 seats in the U.S. Senate and won 680 seats in state legislative bodies. When the dust settled, Republicans were in control in both houses of 25 state legislatures, compared to 15 still controlled by Democrats. And the Republicans had 29 of the nation's 50 governorships. These Republican governors and legislatures are using their political capital from the 2010 election to improve the fiscal and business climates of their states and to attract jobs. These states elected Republican governors and Republican legislatures in 2010 not only erased large budget deficits without raising taxes, but also often went the rest of the way, reforming government worker pension and benefits, and even the related labor management laws relating to negotiations with, between governments and the public employees unions. Cutting taxes for business investment and enacting far-reaching education reforms for K-12 education, all with the purpose of more individual freedom and equal opportunity for Americans to achieve the American dream. Specifically, Governors Chris Christie of New Jersey and John Kasich of Ohio have cut business taxes. And Michigan's Republican legislature and Republican Governor Rick Snyder not only replaced an onerous business tax with a flat tax, but Michigan, yes, Michigan is now a right-to-work state. Indiana's Governor Mitch Daniels capped property tax rates for businesses. And Governor Tom Corbett of Pennsylvania is eliminating certain business taxes and phasing out others. And of course, in a pivotal, nationalized fight, Governor Scott Walker of Wisconsin survived an historic recall election and successfully overhauled the way Wisconsin deals with government employee unions. But in 2010, New York State went in the opposite direction. When it was one of the bluest of blue states, and along with California, Illinois, and Connecticut, other blue states, New York elected a Democrat as governor, Andrew Cuomo. Unfortunately, by extension, our business climate has moved in the wrong direction, in the opposite direction of those states controlled by Republican governors and legislatures. New York is perhaps the most heavily taxed state in the nation. Of the 10 counties nationwide with the worst property tax burden, 9 are in New York. Our regulatory climate is the worst in the nation. We consistently are ranked the least economically and personally free state in the nation. Against that backdrop, one of the reforming Republican governors is now in New York this week, Governor Rick Perry of Texas. Of course, Mayor Bloomberg required that he check his 6-shooters before he came to the state, and he permitted him to come here. But he's here to poach jobs from New York in conjunction with a statewide ad campaign. Texas, of course, has no personal income, while New York levies a personal income tax range of 4% to 8.8%, with New York City adding an additional tax from 2.9% to 3.8%. And if you're a financial institution working in a partnership form, there's additional 4.4% unincorporated entity tax. And then there's the commercial rent tax. And there's a tax on your utility bill. And I could go on, but you get the point about taxation in New York State. And as one of Rick Perry's ads said, if you're tired of the same old recipe of overtaxation, overregulation, and frivolous litigation, get out of New York before you go broke. Texas is calling, your opportunity waits. It's a hard argument to counter. And New York's self-inflicted wounds of overtaxation, overregulation have cost us 18 seats in Congress. 18 seats in Congress over the last 60 years. Down from a high of 42 in 1952 to 27 at present. And we have lost in the last, as a result of the last census, 2 more seats. New York has been and is continuing to lose jobs, productive citizens, and businesses to more competitive states and countries. And let me say, Governor Perry's visit here is not unusual. It's not just because it's a Democratic state. He's going to Illinois, other Democrats, but he's also gone next door to New Mexico, and he has this ongoing friendly competition which the Republican governor in Mexico and other Republican governor of Oklahoma, they go back and forth. Who can be the most business friendly? It's a good competition that is beneficial to the economies of their states, a competition that New York is not a part of. New York is a perfect case study of how bad politics can destroy a state's business environment. And rather than using his substantial political capital to change New York's economically destructive politics, Governor Cuomo has done nothing meaningful to address state taxes and regulations, or the crushing state mandates on local government, which are responsible for our devastating local property taxes. New York is just one of the few states that treat capital gains, for example, as ordinary income. That means that money earned on investments is then subject to a punishing tax regime for high incomes. It's one that eliminates deductions as you get into the higher income brackets and applies the highest rate, not just to your marginal income, but to your entire income. That's a very punishing way. In the financial capital of the world, that's very punishing with respect to capital and capital gains. ABC's Charlie Gibson summed up the benefits of cutting capital gains taxes when he asked Obama in the 2008 primary debates, I think you all remember this, why he wouldn't take such an approach when history shows that when you drop the capital gains rate, and he's talking on the national level here, applies even more on the state level, when you drop the capital gains tax, revenues go up. Obama's answer, well, Charlie, what I'm saying is that I would look at raising the capital gains tax for purposes of fairness. Of fairness, without relevancy to reality. Governor Cuomo pays lip service to growing our economy, but his so-called reforms are clever politics with little constructive substance. The latest being his tax-free New York program, which, with his polls dropping upstate, he announced only a few days ago, before an issue-packed end of the legislative session, which will come at the end of this week. While the program has political appeal, it is too limited in scope, too subject to political control, and too subject to political corruption to be effective. And New York's businesses, especially its financial and insurance businesses, have suffered from a series of 3 Democratic Attorney Generals, Spitzer, Cuomo, and the President Attorney General, Eric Schneiderman, all of whom have scored political points with well-publicized but frivolous charges against New York businesses, rather than using the powers of their office to clean up corruption in Albany. It's no coincidence that 2 of the 3 have become New York governors. AG doesn't stand for Attorney General, it stands for Aspiring Governor. And to use the office for those purposes, to the detriment of New York businesses, is not the way an Attorney General should conduct himself. These AGs have left it to the New York press and U.S. attorneys to ferret out the numerous and mostly Democratic crooks in official Albany. And that brings us back to our opening questions. Will New York remain the financial capital of America, and will America remain the preeminent economy of the world? In this regard, consider these facts. In 2009, Hong Kong raised more money from IPOs, where they did 65 primary issues worth $35 billion, more than any other stock market in the world. In 2011, Hong Kong did even better, processing 82 IPOs worth $36 billion, more than any other market except for the United States and the local markets in mainland China. And with respect to China, a corollary to its ambitions to becoming a world power, and not just a regional power in Asia, is having the renminbi become an international reserve currency, with Shanghai replacing New York as the world's financial center, just as New York replaced London almost 100 years ago. Although London, of course, does remain a world financial center. But with memories of the 1998 Asian financial crisis still in mind, and the natural reluctance of a one-party government to give up control of something as important as their currency, this scenario will remain hypothetical for a long time to come. With respect to New York, we have other strengths which would be hard for China to duplicate. New York is also the legal epicenter of the United States and perhaps of the world, at least in financial and deal documentation. And London, Hong Kong, and New York share something in common: the rule of law with independent courts that are not subject to the telephone justice of political influence as are the courts in China. New York is also the media capital of America and of the world. New York is home to unfettered and constitutionally protected financial media, which together with well-defined securities laws requiring full disclosure, assure that our securities markets for the most part are fairly priced on reliable information. For all these reasons, while Hong Kong may, as long as its British traditions endure, which is in fact questionable, like London, will effectively compete with the New York markets from time to time. But New York will still remain the world's primary financial center. And China, with all its financial, currency, media, legal, and political restrictions, has a long way to go before being able to compete effectively with New York as a financial market. And I wouldn't bet against the United States maintaining its standing as the world's preeminent economy for a long time to come. I'm sure that many of you will recall the late 1980s when Japan was supposed to surpass the United States as the world's #1 economy. Well, it didn't happen. When deflation hit, for more than 20 years, the Japanese have been unable to take the aggressive and coordinated monetary, fiscal, and restructuring actions needed to jumpstart their economy. Although their new Prime Minister Abe, with his 3 arrows mandate, seems to finally be ready to overcome Japan's famous economic inertia. And while China has overtaken Japan as the world's second largest economy, it still has a long way to go as its economy is beginning to show signs of slowing, as its currency appreciates, the cost of labor rises, and a growing middle class begins to express itself politically. Meanwhile, America has taken unprecedented bold fiscal and monetary actions to reflate our economy. Actions which are beginning to show signs of success, in which Japan, as I stated, and the European Union are now belatedly also taking. And this our economy has not dulled America's innovative spirit, as new techniques and methods continue to revolutionize and make more efficient areas diverse as energy. We all know about the fracking story, horizontal drilling and fracking, that is creating a whole new energy equation, not just in the United States, but around the world. And at the other end of the spectrum, social media, Facebook, Twitter, and other means of communication. While the control of Washington and Albany by pro-government and anti-growth policies has dampened economic growth, Republican pro-growth policies in major states across America are setting the stage for demonstrated economic progress in those states and for political success in both the 2014 midterm elections and the 2016 presidential elections, in which the economy and jobs will be the major issues. In the end, because the United States has both a vibrant economic system in which you play a vital role, and an open political system with many levels of governance and political competition, America will remain the world's preeminent economy for the foreseeable future. And America will remain a shining city on the hill as a beacon of freedom, prosperity, and justice for all the people and all the nations of the world. Thank you very much. God bless. There you go in the back.
Why do you think that the RMB will not become the reserve currency?
I'm sorry?
If part of your speech, you were indicating that you thought that China and the RMB would take over, but then you changed back to New York, so I don't understand that.
Well, the renminbi is still very restricted. I think the Chinese would like to be a world power on the world stage. They'd like the moment, and that was the purpose of the new president, Xi Jinping, coming here, meeting alone and informal with places, Sunnylands in California with President Obama. And their aspirations would be to having the renminbi as a international currency, an international reserve currency. But politically, when you have one party, and so that's their ultimate goal. If you're going to be a world power, you need that kind of a world currency. But because they're one party, country, and that one party wants to keep control, they have to keep control of their currency, as well as many other aspects of the country's political life, which will not permit them to get to that stage.
If you look backwards, pound sterling was a reserve currency until the U.S. currency took over. And that was, at that point, a monarchy.
Actually, it was a reserve currency until it ran into a disaster in the 1970s, which resulted in Maggie Thatcher being elected. And I think the euro, obviously, would like to be a reserve currency on the magnitude of the dollar. China's got a long way to go, but they would like to get there.
What do you see the direction of the Republican parties locally and nationally combining themselves and focusing on and usually that before the election?
You know, after the last election was a tough election for Republicans, obviously. There was an expectation that we could win. The economy was sour. President Clinton did an extraordinary job in his keynote speech at the Republican convention for getting the message across that the Great Recession happened on George Bush's watch. It wasn't so much like 1980 when President Reagan could validly ask, are you better now than you were 4 years ago? The answer was no. The answer this time was, yeah, we are a little bit better. The economy has come back, and it was Bush's recession. It's more like 36 when Roosevelt campaigned for re-election and blamed the Depression on Herbert Hoover and legitimately was able to do it. And the unemployment rate at the time in 36 was going down from 24% to 14%. Still bad, country going in the right direction. Somewhat the same conditions for Obama, and he won as a result. Not in the kind of landslide that Hoover did in 36. So it was a big disappointment because of the expectations of the party that we could win because the economy was still sour. And the National Committee has been working through the returns and has concluded that the party didn't reach out enough in order to bring in people we should have brought into the party. We're not as diverse as a party as the country is. Now, I would differ with that analysis in one way. I think the election was lost if you analyze it. Obama actually got 5 million less votes than he got 4 years ago. They got in 2008. 5 million less votes. If you analyze where the votes were, in places like Sandusky, Ohio, it was the ethnic Reagan Democrats who didn't come out to vote for Obama. In 2008, they voted in the primary for Mrs. Clinton. They voted reluctantly in 2008 for Obama. They couldn't do it this time around. But Mitt Romney and the Republican Party was just looking too elitist for him. Joe Sixpack, as they were called, the Reagan administration, couldn't come out and vote for Mitt Romney. And I think that's more of the reason he lost. But putting that aside, the conclusion of the chairman of the Republican Party, the RNC, that we had to reach out more and be more diverse and represent all of America is absolutely right. Because the Hispanic population is getting more important, and we owe it to America to aspire to represent all of America. So we are going through that process on the national level. The chairman means it. And here in New York, since there's no place where you have a better opportunity to reach out to the diverse population of the United States than here in New York, we have in fact been doing that. And we have a special effort doing that. And at our annual dinner for the state party 2 weeks ago, the dinner was attended by almost a majority of minorities. And these were people who reached out to 100 black men, Hispanics. Peter Lau is here, has mobilized Chinese for us. Recruits had an event, which is the biggest Republic event ever in Chinatown. And we appeal, Chinese are entrepreneurial. We're entrepreneurial. We believe, they believe in what we believe in as Republicans. We've appealed to them. Hispanics are basically socially conservative. We're socially conservative. We've attracted, there's a minister named A.R. Bernard, Pastor Bernard. He's got a church in southern Brooklyn with 37,000 members of his church. Guess what? He's a Republican. And he's come out and now supported us. He spoke at our dinner. So here in New York, we're putting together those networks, and which, working with other parts of the country, we hope is going to really realize our aspiration as leaders in the party to represent all the diversity of America. And that's the effort at the party level, so that our candidates can run on that platform, and we can have those votes from the diversity that is America.
My question is, what about for us very conservative, sort of Robert Taft, Barry Goldwater Republicans, who want a foreign policy of neutrality? We want to go back to, the Republican Party of the 30s through the 60s, where we weren't the big interventionists. Why is the Republican Party not embracing the Ron Paul, the Rand Pauls, who think that socially it should be up to the states, and fiscally conservative, small government, non-interventionist street?
Yeah, you bring up a good point, and let's just address it in terms of trade policy, where the rubber hits the road. And traditionally, the Democratic Party, I'm talking way back, the international arm of it here sort of was in charge of that. The unions went along with it, with international trade policy. The Republicans were the party of saying, why do we get foreign aid? Why do we take care of America first? Reagan changed that. And we went through a golden age, I believe, where free trade, which is, as my father-in-law always says, it's good policy, but bad politics. And we got over that being bad politics. This is on a bipartisan basis. The leaders of the Democrat and the Republican Party were both for free trade. That consensus is gone now. The unions have taken more charge of a more isolationist policy. And on the Republican side, the sort of Robert Taft mentality, again, is predominating. It took a long time, although under George W. Bush, he did craft free trade pacts with Korea, with Colombia, and I'm trying to think what was the third. Anyway, there were three trade. Panama. Three trade pacts, and they were sitting there to be signed by the president, and they had been approved by the Senate, and it took him 3 years to getting around to doing that because of the problems with the unions and whatever. America has to remain an actor on the world stage. And if there's any part of the Republican Party that's going to stand for that, it's going to be the New York Party, just because New York being what it is, financial capital of the world, and how we are so involved in world trade. And if we don't, who is going to assure the peace, for example, in Asia? There's no NATO in Asia. There's no European Union in Asia. You have parties that historically have warred with one another. And the only thing that has kept them at peace over this time, that's been the United States, a country that's far away with no territorial aspirations in Asia, willing to project its power there in support of our allies in Korea and in Japan, and of course supporting Taiwan. So you go around the world, America is indispensable to the peace and prosperity of the world. That doesn't mean we have to go to war every place to do that. I mean, but we do have to be willing to project our power, and just the willingness to do that will assure that the peace in the world is kept, so that freedom and democracy can spread around the world. Yes, sir.
Yeah, back to the local situation. All that being said, is there an opportunity for any of the Republican candidates to come close in the mayoral election this fall and get over the fact that they're wealthy, elitist relative to the Democrats who are running? I mean,
Well, history is against you, of course, in making that comment. The last time that a Democrat was elected mayor of New York was 1989. And ever since then, the mayor of New York has been elected on the Republican ticket. Having said that, let me start with your hardest case. While he is a billionaire, I wouldn't call John Catsimatidis an elitist. You're going to have a more down-to-earth fellow who spent the last 5 years running for mayor in many ways. He's going to run if Mayor Bloomberg couldn't get rid of the term limits. And he's been working ever since, and not just supporting Republicans, but actually going through their small events and making a very down-to-earth fellow, not an elitist. And of course, Joe Lhota in no way is an elitist. He's paid his dues as a deputy mayor and doing all the hard work of helping to run the city, including during 9/11, when he was really Rudy Giuliani's right-hand man in keeping the city functioning and doing the things that had to do under extraordinary circumstances. Having said all that, it's tough. New York City is 7-1 Democratic, and it's a miracle that we have won every election since 1989. It's going to be tough to do it again. That's why I carefully said run on the Republican ticket. But he's managed the city well, and Republicans, we should be the party that manages things well. In many ways, he has, with respect to economic and other matters, followed pretty much what Republicans would want. Maybe a little bit too much of the nanny state for Republicans, and maybe too many bike lanes for Republicans, but that's Mayor Bloomberg.
In a meeting with one of the Finance Committee senators a couple of weeks ago, the senator was excited to tell us that he just met with Mary Jo White, head of the SEC, and she was going to make it a priority to study the Jobs Act. So my question is Congress going to let them sit on that thing forever? They've had it for a year now.
Yeah.
What's it going to take to make it happen?
You know, my evaluation is they're just reluctant, such a radical change in the way the SEC has thought over the years. And Reg D itself was a radical change, of course. Now there's a radical change on top of that. And so I think the staff, without real leadership, is reluctant to make the change. I'm willing to bet Mary Jo White's going to take charge of that and say, look, this is what Congress did. We implemented, let's go and do it. And get the rules out. In doing that, they're obviously going to put in as many restrictions as they can so that they encourage it to be implemented in the right way to start with, and then over time we'll probably relax those rules. But I suspect they will be conservative as they can be in implementing the Jobs Act.
And do you think it's a time that good policy and bad politics was brought to the forefront? For example, proper immigration, not illegal immigration, and making the one thing that kept this country together, the English language, making it law that the English is the language of this country, and this nonsense stops where you have to put things out which says it's in Chinese, it's in Korean. If you can't read and write English, why should you be given the right to vote? This never happened in the old days.
There's really an extraordinary effort going now in Congress. They call it the Gang of Eight. And it really originated in the Senate. Actually, it originated back with John McCain and George W. Bush to get a serious immigration package passed. The person who helped blow it up, incidentally, was then Senator Obama, who put some poison pills into the whole package, along with some other senators to make sure it didn't happen, because he didn't want a Republican president to get credit for it. But that effort has now become a bipartisan effort, and President Obama tried to get involved in it, and he was told, stay out of it or else you'll mess it up. So this is a real effort going on in a bipartisan way among serious senators to get the legislation passed. With respect to your comment on the English language, part of it is you have, before anyone can get citizenship, at the end of that whole process, they have to learn English. Now, how strong that is, whatever, I don't know those details. I hope that is a fairly strong requirement, because I've never, as I
I supervised the authorization when I have the charter schools in New York State for 10 years. And I noticed a number of bilingual programs in those charter schools. As long as those bilingual programs are aimed at people learning English, I think that's good. If it's a way of, so they can maintain their own language while you're in this, that doesn't work. And I think these requirements in the immigration law should have the same object as for people who are expect to use the English language effectively. Any other questions?
Okay, I got one.
Chairman.
We're doing our pool. Okay, assuming Hillary runs,
Yeah.
let's go with the top 3 Republicans. I'll say Christie. Don't everybody say.
Is there another bid? We have one bid for Christie here.
I'll go Christie.
Christie? Christie?
Harry?
Who?
Harry. He had a shot.
Mitch Daniels? Mitch Daniels is president of Indiana University. I don't think he's gonna do that. I'm sorry, what was the other?
Richard Huntsman.
Huntsman. Yeah, he's up. I don't think he would really have much of a chance, but I vote for Huntsman.
Hi, what do you think is the best way to encourage college students to pursue entrepreneurship? And what do you think are the current problems with higher education today? And maybe potential solutions?
You know, some of our best and most effective entrepreneurs have really decided they didn't want to continue with higher education. And just a lot of examples of that. I think Germany and Netherlands and Denmark have effective economies despite the European Union's problems. In large part because they have a very effective vocational training programs that work well. I think this country, we have a belief that is encouraged that everyone has to go through a liberal arts higher education. And there are a lot of people who don't want that. And they can do very well with a vocational training or something. They can build businesses, they can build wealth, and do something that they really want to do. And I think you found this, Mayor Bloomberg has done this, and some of our Republican candidates here in New York City for mayor are back saying we need to have a very strong system of vocational training as an alternative road to career success. And I think our community colleges need to go in that same direction, be comprehensive community colleges, where someone who goes to that, maybe they go there thinking I'm going to get a vocational training, but then the teachers at community colleges, and I was chairman of that committee for 14 years at the State University, I saw a lot of them. They really specialize in, and what they love to do is find a person who's going this direction, but has talents to go in that direction. So someone who thinks you're going to be a lawyer, no, you'd do better as a computer systems person, or a person who decides he's going to be a car mechanic. No, you would go on to a professional school. And they do that. They sort it out well, but they ought to be encouraged to do that as part of what they do, in addition to vocational training at K through 12 level.
Thanks. Okay. Ed.